Come and fly away with me. 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 Don't you be afraid, everything will change. You and I jumping off the edge. They say dreamers never die, so come.
Love in Stones, Scrolls and Songs, a traveller's tale across Israel and Palestine. I still remember the first time I slipped through Jerusalem's Lion's Gate at dawn, the air cool and expectant as the call to prayer wove itself around church bells. For years, I had heard the stories on the news, conflicts, unrest, uncertainty, and yet, something deeper pulled me here. Moments later, I found myself drifting on the hypersaline waters of the Dead Sea, the very same sea that cradles the caves of Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls lay hidden for centuries, waiting to bridge past and present. From the olive-terraced hills around Nablus, each gnarled trunk whispering generations of family stories, to the Jordan Valley's sun-drenched ridges that blush gold at first light, every vista here invites you to fall in love with history and humanity intertwined. And so, our journey must begin at the very roots, ancient roots and sacred landscapes. As first light touched the honeyed stones of Jerusalem's old city, I wandered its winding alleys, each turn humming with centuries of sacred promise. The narrow alley ahead was shrouded in dim light, but I could already hear the distant echo of chanting from the dome of the rock and the faint toll of church bells in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Here, where three faiths converge on the same slab of rock and centuries of devotion press against every wall, it felt as though the very air vibrated with sacred memory. My first morning was spent tracing the path of pilgrims along the Via Dolorosa, pausing at each station to reflect on stories that have been retold for 2 millennia. I ran my hand over carved steps and crumbling arches, imagining the footsteps of seekers and saints who walked here long before me. By midday, the sun glimmered off golden domes and minarets, drawing me toward the Mount of Olives. From that vantage, the city's patchwork of white stone roofs, green gardens and spired silhouettes spread out like a living mosaic, an enduring proof to humanity's search for the divine. A short drive later, I found myself at the edge of the Judean desert, where cliffs plunge into the salt-crusted banks of the Dead Sea. Standing at the water's margin, I watched as the dawn light painted the horizon in pale pink and amber. This otherworldly lake, 1,300 feet below sea level, has drawn travelers since antiquity, from biblical prophets seeking solitude to Roman emperors in search of health and renewal. As I waded in, the buoyant water lifted me effortlessly, encouraging me to lean back and stare up at the endless blue sky. In that silent suspension, it was easy to believe the stories of ascetic monks who once carved their cells high in these cliffs, seeking closeness to God in the wind-whipped stillness. Crossing into the Palestinian territories, I felt history shift beneath my feet once more. In Bethlehem, I joined locals lighting candles in the Church of the Nativity. The hush inside the grotto, broken only by whispered prayers, made the world outside seem impossibly distant. Then, winding eastward through olive groves that charted the terraced hills of the West Bank, I marveled at how each gnarled trunk held a family's legacy, centuries of harvests, festivals, and prayers for rain. But it was in these silent groves that I recognized how deeply the land itself is woven into both scripture and daily life. Here, every hill and valley carries a story, of prophets resting under legendary trees, of caravans crossing desert sands, of nomads following the same stars that still guide Bedouin herds. From the stones of Jerusalem to the salt flats of the Dead Sea and the olive terraces of the West Bank, these landscapes are more than backdrops. They are living chapters in a story that began long before any of us. intertwined faiths, and living traditions. The call to prayer echoed through the narrow lanes of East Jerusalem just as the church bells began to chime. It was a moment so layered in meaning that I had to stop and simply listen. In this part of the world, faith isn't just something practiced. It's lived, breathed, and shared in every step of daily life. I wandered through the old city, where Armenian incense curled out from a chapel door while Jewish families passed on their way to the Western Wall, and veiled women sold figs and olives near Damascus Gate. Here, within mere footsteps, stood the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Dome of the Rock, and Al-Aqsa Mosque, each sacred to billions, yet stitched together by ancient stone paths and shared sky. In Hebron, I visited the Ibrahimi Mosque, the cave of the patriarchs, sacred to both Muslims and Jews. The division inside, a physical barrier between worshippers, was stark. Still, the devotion was the same on both sides. Heads bowed, lips murmuring prayers handed down through millennia. In Bethlehem, I stood in the Church of the Nativity as pilgrims lit candles in silence. Just a few streets away, a group of young Muslims played oud and darbuka beneath a fading mural of Jerusalem's skyline. I didn't need translation. The music told me enough, that hope still beats, even here. These intertwined faiths aren't separate strands. They're a braid of history, belief, and endurance. People here wake to different prayers, but dream of peace under the same stars. It's not a place of easy answers, but it is a place of deep meaning, where every ritual, every festival, every shared meal carries centuries of soul. And so, with the rhythm of prayer still pulsing in my ears, I follow that energy into the next chapter of our journey, where faith meets festivity, and history is sung and sold beneath striped awnings and open skies. Cultural heartbeats, the markets and music of these utmost wonderlands. Cultural heartbeats, markets and music. A drumbeat pulled me in before I could even see the crowd. Somewhere between the scent of cinnamon and the clatter of copper pans, a group of musicians had gathered near the entrance of the Mahane Yehuda market in West Jerusalem. Their rhythm was infectious, part traditional Mizrahi, part modern improvisation. Shoppers paused mid-bargain, shopkeepers leaned over crates of oranges, and just for a moment, the market danced. Markets here aren't just places of commerce, they're living theatres of culture. In East Jerusalem, the old city's souks unfold like a maze, each alley humming with its own music. The chant of a spice seller, the rustle of kefiyehs, the ringing laughter of schoolchildren darting past Roman columns. I passed a narrow stall lit by hanging pomegranates, where an old man played the qanun with fingers quick as birds. His melody bent time. I spent an afternoon in Hebron's old market, where tradition held on through the weight of conflict. The merchants were proud, glass blowers, leather workers, and sweet sellers offering samples of sesame-studded halva. A teenager tapped a darbuka with a confident hand. His rhythm echoed off the old stone walls, defiant and joyful. It's in these spaces, between the notes of a love song and the scent of roasting nuts, between the bargaining and the belly laughs, that you hear the heartbeat of a people. This isn't just tourism. It's tuning yourself to the rhythm of survival, joy, resistance, and identity. It was over Musakan that I first understood how food can carry memory like scripture. The table was modest, just a low wooden board in a courtyard in Ramallah. But the dish was bold, warm, sumac-stained chicken resting on a bed of onions and taboon bread, edges crisped by a fire that had burned since early morning. The olive oil, green and peppery, had been pressed by the host's grandfather. "Musakan is our flag," she told me, tearing a piece of bread with practiced hands. "It's what we cook when we want to remember who we are." In East Jerusalem, I joined a family at sundown during Ramadan. The call to prayer echoed through the alleys as dates were passed around, sweet and sticky, followed by steaming bowls of lentil soup and fataya pastries filled with spinach. There was laughter, the clink of spoons, and a pause for reflection. Food wasn't just shared, it was honored. The morning mist hung low over the Jordan Valley as I stood among terraced olive groves that had fed generations. There was something in the way the sun gently broke through the haze, casting gold across stone and soil that made the land feel alive, ancient yet breathing, timeless. Driving north, the landscape shifted again. Around Mount Carmel, wildflowers bloomed defiantly. I walked a trail scented with pine and thyme, the wind carrying echoes of ancient battles and whispered prayers. In Galilee, the sea spread out like a mirror to the sky. Fishermen cast nets into its calm waters, just as they had in stories I grew up hearing. From city to city, the love story deepens. Despite the shadows of conflict, the spirit of these lands remains unbroken, etched into every shared meal, every call to prayer, every song sung across stone courtyards. Here, faiths entwine, cultures bloom, and humanity pulses through ancient and modern alike. This journey isn't just about seeing, it's about feeling, connecting, understanding. Israel and Palestine await, not as battlegrounds, but as places of beauty, resilience, and warmth.